Now it's time for the final showdown with Kefka, and thus the final boss music, Dancing Mad. The fight with Kefka is actually a series of 4 fights. Each of these fights have movements that reflect what's going on and usually bring back a theme or two from other parts of the game. All of these stages have unnamed bosses, so I'll just refer to it as the first, second, and third tier, and then Kefka, who is the final tier. Also, if you want to read more about this, there are several articles about Dancing Mad. My favorite is Final Fantasy VI's Dancing Mad, a critical analysis by Sweet Madness on Destructoid, published in 2009. I try to avoid making all the same points as the article, but she makes some really good points in the article, so some overlap is likely. But enough preface, let's jump into it. In the first tier, you hear this. This is the Overwhelming Force theme, or as it's more commonly known apparently, the Catastrophe theme, and I feel kinda dumb that I didn't call it that earlier. This is very similar to the track Catastrophe, but with a lot more energy. Also, the theme is being played on a pipe organ, which over the years has come to represent evil and God, and since Kefka is currently an evil god, it fits perfectly. However, it's not as driving as you would expect a final boss theme to be, which plays into the game's kind of trick, because while there are multi-level boss fights in many Japanese role-playing games, usually it's just the villain transforming into various forms. Here, Kefka sees you so far below him that he isn't even bothering to fight you, and he's letting his minions take you out. After you beat the first tier, you move up to the second. This has a similar feeling to the first tier, driving but not quite. It goes from a kind of march feeling into a straight up organ solo piece, but then loops back to the chorus and drums. This would be part of the mad dancing that the title would insinuate. Kefka is insane and has been insane, but this piece furthers that feeling. It has a very Baroque and Bach-inspired feeling to it, but not nearly as much as the next tier. The third tier starts with some bells and then goes to something which is very clearly inspired by Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor. You've probably heard it before, or at least the very beginning of it. The Fugue section is the important one in comparison to Dancing Mad, but what is a fugue? A fugue is a compositional technique where there is a main musical subject or theme that is imitated in different voices and repeated and developed over the course of the piece. There are a ton of similarities between Bach's famous Toccata and Fugue and Dancing Mad, so I'm going to play a few. First, here's the main theme of Bach's Fugue. And the main theme for Dancing Mad. Both of these pieces have their themes imitated in different voices. Both have lots of big chords. And Dancing Mad has some fairly direct references to Bach. It also has a great reprisal of Kefka's theme in the bass line. And also a reprisal of the sweep when you go into battle. And also, I'll take this time to point out that this Bach-inspired organ fugue is part of the final boss music from a video game in 1994. Then comes the intro to the final fight against Kefka. It's the intro music, the very first thing you hear in the game right after you hit the power button. Then it goes into this. This is the "let's do this" section, and the most final boss feeling part of the entire piece. There's so many interesting things here. First off, the other 3 stages were you fighting some less powerful but still strong monsters, then going to the next. But now you're fighting the real deal. You aren't dealing with all the fluff or all the charades, but the real deal Kefka. You are literally on the same level as him, and the music reflects that all of the religious imagery and all the grandeur that Kefka put on himself is now meaningless because his rule is about to come to an end. The heroes being on the same level is also reflected through the organ changing from a pipe organ to an electric one. It goes from an instrument with very much religious connotations to one that's more closely associated with progressive rock. There's even a breakdown that sounds exactly like something Yes or Emerson, Lake and Palmer would play. It even has another cool rendition of Kefka's theme. Then, after you successfully beat Kefka and thus the game, the characters all have to run for their lives to get away from the destroying tower. During the running away scene, you get to listen to the ending theme, where the game zooms in on each of the characters in a little vignette that reprises the character's theme. Then, after the game runs through each character theme and the party escapes in the Falcon, they fly off and the Final Fantasy theme plays. This is a theme that recurs in almost every Final Fantasy game since the first one, and creates a magical and hopeful feeling as you're flying over the world, which is already starting to look better. This also continues the overall opera theme, as the game is closing with a section that is purely music and recapping the game in a sense. And the piece also gets a chance to do something that almost no other song in the game does: end. Then, after the game has settled down, all the credits are done, and all the music is finished, you see the end, and it's silent for a little bit. But then, in comes the prelude. There is no other way that I would want to end this series. The Prelude is in almost every Final Fantasy game, and it's a simple arpeggiated chord that creates this magical atmosphere that's just as fitting at the beginning of the game as it is in the end. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me, and I hope that your appreciation for the soundtrack has grown as a result. Until next time, listen well.